Here with the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, Ryan Day. You've had all summer to practice dodging this question. So who is your starting quarterback as we enter camp?
Right. we're still probably exactly where we were, coming out of the spring. Although, this summer's been great to see these guys grow and build. They both got stronger. Added Lincoln into the mix, and now we, have four quarterbacks. We've had more depth in that room since I've been here, really, other than maybe that first year. So. And that was back in 17. So that part's been good, but now we need somebody to emerge and play at starter level.
I know coaches hate timelines because once you put it out there, people hold you to it. In your head, do you have an idea of how you want this to play out? Would you play a couple games in a regular season and see if you have a guy, or do you want someone set before Indiana?
You know what? I don't know if there's an exact way you want it to play out. You just have to feel that out. In the past, we've kind of named somebody, after the first couple of weeks. We did it with Justin, we did it with CJ, and, did it with Dwayne. But, you just never know how those things are going to shake out. I guess that's a possibility. We'll see how these next, few weeks go.
You've had the benefit of having incumbent quarterbacks a couple times. It's been very helpful. You don't have that, but you do have an incumbent, Marvin Harrison Jr. Is he going to make whoever wins that battle a very good quarterback?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Marvin's had a great summer, and he's a weapon. He is. He's had really a great couple months here leading up to the summer. And he, there's not a lot of guys that are going to be able to cover him across the country. So he's going to demand a lot of double coverage and a lot of attention, which opens up the whole offense. But, when he's in a situation where he's on a one-on-one, that's an advantage for the Buckeyes.
I know one of the things people ask me around Columbus is, what's your biggest fear about this team? They love to ask me, what's my concern? If I had to pick one, I guess maybe continuity on the offensive line. Where do you feel like you stand? Because it's such an important part of the team.
Well, I feel like, since the 2019 team, this is the most experience we brought back on defense. I think we've added some really good pieces. I feel like, what you're going to get from this crowd. And certainly, a big part of that, we know the emphasis on, limiting the explosive plays is something that we got to do a great job of. But, the corner play, we've had more depth, I think, there now than we've ever had. Experience at linebacker is kind of like it was in 19 with those guys who are there, Pete and Tuff and Justin and Barron, similar to where we are right now with Tommy, with Steele, with Cody. CJ Hicks had a great summer, so feel decent about that. The line has got some depth there and some experience. So I think that's probably the most noteworthy thing. I think when you're just looking at, all right, what do you have to replace? Certainly you got to replace the two tackles, the center, and the quarterback. Yeah. I mean, those are the areas that we missed the most. Obviously missed a couple other guys, but, it's the guys that you don't know because they haven't played that probably give you the most angst.
When I look at the good Buckeye defenses of the past decade, there was a guy named Bosa, another guy named Bosa, a guy named Chase. Yeah. In JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, it seems like you have a couple alphas if they can take that step. Are you confident they can get to that level?
I am. I think this is year 3, and typically when you talk about those guys you just mentioned, that third year is where they took that next step. Whether it was the defensive line or maybe it was Jeff Okudah, a lot of times that third year is, okay, I've played a couple years. I played as a freshman, I played as a sophomore, but now it's time for me to really turn that thing, up a notch. And so, that's what we're counting on. And, in the past, we've had guys rolling in those positions. And we're going to count on these guys to take the majority of the snaps and have that presence throughout the game.
When I look at your schedule and I see road games at Notre Dame, road games against a fickle Wisconsin team, road game obviously against the Wolverines, I mean, the schedule here looks pretty rough. What do you think of when you look at the schedule, the way it shakes out?
Well, I think first off, what's noteworthy is you have 6 road games. Yeah. And, some of those road games are going to be a challenge. So we got to be strong on the road. But I think it also allows us an opportunity to build up a callus. Winning games on the road kind of brings teams together, and being on the road has that opportunity. So it's something we've talked about as a team. We know what this challenge is going to be. And, we got to start fast. We play a conference game right out of the gate at Indiana on the road. Come back with 2 non-conference games, and we're right back at Notre Dame. So we got to have a really good preseason, and hopefully those road games will allow us to build that callus that we'll need that will translate into the end of the season.
I'll get you out on this one. To come back here in December, you got to play well in November, October, September, but it all starts in August. So what are you hoping to get done in camp?
Yeah, I mean, just being here, it's like we got to get back here, and even having Marvin here and his dad, in the rafters and everything. It's just, that's something that obviously is one of the things that we always look at every year. But I think, we got to win these road games early on. We got to build up that We got to make sure we establish ourselves at quarterback on the offensive line, the defensive line, and continue to lean on the guys up front. Because once we get into November, we got to be able to run the ball and stop the run, which for the most part we've done. I think in the last game of the regular season, we let two score it out for big plays, and that just it ruined the whole regular season. But up until that point, I felt like we did a better job there. Now coming back with a more experienced defensive line and then establishing that offensive line, it'd be also good to get Travion back running the ball on offense. So there's a lot that comes with it. It's not just one thing, but we got to continue to build and grow as a team as the season goes on.
Last chance to name a starting quarterback on 10 TV. We're not going to do it now.
Probably going to pass.
Okay.